It is 6:01 right now. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And Marsha, would you like to lead us with the Pledge of Allegiance?
Of course.
Thank you.
Everyone put your right hand over your heart. Look toward the flag if you have one handy.
Don't have one.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of
the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Valerie, would you mind to do a roll call for us?
Sure. David Lynn?
Present.
Marsha Solario?
Present.
Dario Castellanos?
Hi, Colleen.
Oh wait, he's coming in right now. Hold on.
Oh yeah, there is. I missed it.
Hello.
Hi, we're doing roll call. Dario?
Here.
Donna Chia?
Present.
Rosario Diaz?
Present.
Jim Grivich?
Present.
Colleen Rosati? We can't hear you, Dave.
You're muted, David.
Colleen is with us not only in spirit, but via Dave's telephone. So Colleen, what's happening now is they are taking the roll.
Colleen Rosati?
All present. Here.
Okay. All present.
Thank you, Valerie.
You're welcome.
Do we have any public comments today?
I emailed you, it was one, but it was two, but from the same person.
Okay.
Mr. Shoemaker.
Yes.
Can somebody read the comments? I couldn't seem to find the email here.
Are we going to read them? Because I know on the agenda it says we're not going to read them during the meeting. Under
Okay.
comment. So do you want to read them?
How would we usually address the comments that came in writing format?
Well, the issue I have right now is I don't think there's any way for somebody to communicate with this committee verbally.
Mm-hmm.
So I think under court cases that have happened recently, there has to be some mechanism that the public can address Brown Act groups. So it is a structural problem with our meeting. And I understand we don't want to read 100 emails, but we only had one. I think it would be of interest at least to read kind of the summary of what the gentleman had to say. You can summarize it, I think, by just reading the end of it or something instead of the whole thing. But my point is that if everybody had already read it themselves, that'd be easy. But David, you don't seem to have access to it, so I'm a little bit concerned.
Chairman Lynn?
Yes, please go ahead.
I agree with Jim Gurich's comments. I just forwarded the thoughts from the resident, and I'd be happy to read it out loud if that's your direction. I don't want to quell public opportunity to participate. So if I may, with your direction, I'll read it out loud.
Thank you, David. I think that's a good idea.
It's from John Shoemaker. The state controller and state auditor have stated West Covina makes decisions without knowing the cost of the decision. In the, quote, financial recovery plan, the city manager states any decision $75,000 or over will have a fiscal impact analysis. Does this mean the health department, one, costs less than $75,000 to set up and run, paren, please show analysis, close paren, two, is exempt from the cost analysis, three, is something the council will do regardless of anyone's opinion and reality. In December 2020, the city manager wrote a letter to the state auditor, thus had knowledge of the issues pointed out. Why did the city manager fail to perform an analysis of the new health department costs? Does this lack of analysis and continuing the ways of the past reflect a city that will tell others anything they want to hear without concern as to the implications of decisions? Please explain why it took from early December 2020 to March 2021 to publish the so-called plan. You could have just copied previous replies to the state controller and state auditor, as at least that had some thought put into them. One final comment, thought, question. In order for this to be binding on the city, when will the city council review and approve? I urge the committee to vote no on this poorly constructed plan that say and does nothing. John Shoemaker, and his phone number is listed.
Thank you, David. So let's get to our agenda number 1 item here, which is the meeting minutes for our February 24th meeting. I guess I'll be the first one to start with my quick comment. In reviewing the meeting minute, I noticed that there wasn't much documentation regarding the discussion and or inquiries from some of the committee members. I just wanted to get a little bit of insight as to why the discussion was not documented here. Have we changed our formatting or approach in documenting these type of meetings?
I share David's concern.
As do I. This is Marsha.
I concur.
What we're doing is action minutes is what the city clerk has informed us to be doing now.
Well,
to add a little bit to that, this is Robin. All the other committees and boards do action minutes only, and that's why we went to this format.
Well, there's a structural problem with that comment. First, it's retroactive. We weren't informed in advance that change would be made. And second, the city managers specifically asked for us to provide commentary in a previous meeting, suggested that would be an easier format rather than the committee having to take action on all of our suggestions. So we were, in effect, following what at least I perceived as the city manager's suggestion for the way we should conduct our business. And then having it taken out from under us, in effect, by not any of it being published, I think is a flaw in the method for doing business. Because obviously, if I had have known that was the case, I think I, at least personally, would have structured some of that commentary in the form of motions and votes, since now it doesn't appear in the minutes. And at least for one, I think the minutes should include some of that commentary.
I second everything Mr. Grivich just said.
Mr. Chair, Pauline Rosati, the last group of minutes that was from the January meeting, I felt exactly what you were speaking of, Mr. Grivich, that it didn't give commentary from us. There was a big void and a lot of pertinent information was given. I did send an email to the city manager after that meeting in regards to my concern. And I'm not sure that there was a response to it. And I don't know about the action. This is the first that I'm hearing about action minutes. So I agree 100% with what you all are saying.
So based on the comments from our committee members, would you be amenable in... I see your concern of not specifying the actions that were discussed and or to be adopted during the meeting. So I have no concerns in carving out a section that details the actions that we are considering going forward. But based on the comments from the committee audience, it seems like we have a consensus in having an interest in documenting all the discussion points on a continuous basis, like in the past. Is that something you would be amenable to doing in the future?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Sure.
These are action minutes. the minutes you're asking to receive and file tonight are those of the February meeting. The meeting of the previous meeting were approved at your last meeting. So tonight, what's on your agenda is the ones from February 24th. Action minutes imply that the motions and the votes are recorded, and the discussion, while it's certainly why we hold the meetings, and your direction is given and heard, action minutes are a consistent style of minutes that are used across all of the city minutes, the planning commission, the city council, the other advisory boards. And so I would encourage you, if you want comments to be made, that you include them in your motions, because otherwise the record of the meeting would be the meeting itself, but we're not going to be doing verbatim minutes, which seems to be your direction. That's not going to be possible giving our staff. Not going to be possible for any city committee, including this one.
I don't object to the request for the change in the procedure for future meetings. My objection was based on the last meeting, the February meeting, because we were actually told to, in that context, to provide commentary rather than motions, because it was, in effect, it was awkward. I basically feel that right now we're in kind of a catch-22, and I would like to, I guess it's a motion, I would like to move that we amend the meeting of February 28th to include, which I think was the clear intent of the committee, that the city take clear action with respect to solving the issues that were brought up in the audit, specifically the going concern comment, the material weaknesses comment, and the significant deficiencies comments. That's it. That's my motion.
This is Vice Chair Solorio. I'm in complete agreement again with Mr. Grivich. I would think I would like to kind of amend that motion if maybe we could table the approval of the minutes so we could review the edits first.
Fine. It's fine with me.
Yep.
And then moving forward, we do an action type.
We're gonna be presenting you with action minutes. If there's a volunteer on the committee who wants to take more detailed minutes, I would welcome that. We can place that conversation on a future agenda, but the staff would be presenting action minutes.
I'm sorry, David. I think we're speaking past each other. My issue, and I think the other members' issue right now, is these minutes as presented to us do not adequately represent the heart of the meeting in February. And the style of meeting that we ran was at the direction of the city manager, and I was comfortable with that direction and that style, but to have it retroactively changed and as a result have our intent and discussion in effect removed from the record, I think is improper. So I'll be glad to volunteer and write up something and then have the rest of the committee amend it so that we can at least get what we were saying into the record for the last meeting, because I think it's very important.
I have another suggestion, and I agree we don't want to be talking past each other, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
One possibility would be that the meetings could be video or audio tape recorded, and the entire conversation then could be captured through that recording. So you'd have action minutes and a tape recording for people to review. That's the way we handle the city council. That's the way we handle the planning commission. That's the way we handle the Parks and Rec, Senior and Community Service Advisory Commission.
Well, I'm only trying to correct one meeting, David. I'm not trying to, because obviously in this meeting and all future meetings, we won't talk with the new movement towards action minutes, we'll make motions on everything we want included in the record. I'm only talking about correcting February right now, because I think the minutes as written failed to capture what happened at the meeting, and grossly failed to capture. It's not just a minor error, and it's a significant issue because it's the audit itself. I don't know what anybody else thinks, but I agree that in the future we'll make motions on everything we want to be in the record. That's not a problem. I'm only talking about February right now.
Okay. So do I have a motion to table the meeting minute for February 24th so one of our committee member will be revising and get it represented at the next meeting?
I so move.
I'll second. This is Marsha.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, what the motion again is to table the February minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
And one of the members, and I volunteered, if anybody else wants to volunteer, that's fine, write up a suggested addition to the minutes for our consideration at the next meeting.
Okay, I'll take a roll call right now.
Are you taking a roll call, Valerie?
Yes, sorry, I was writing the motion down.
Oh, no worries.
David Lynn,
Aye.
Marsha Solario,
Aye.
Dario Castellanos,
Abstain.
Donna Chia,
Aye.
Rosario Diaz,
Hold on. Can you hear me?
yes.
I didn't understand the dog's vote.
That was a no.
Sorry about that.
That was a no, clearly.
Those are my Yorkies, so I'm sorry.
Okay, Rosario Diaz,
Aye.
Jim Grivich,
Aye.
Colleen Rosati.
Aye.
Thank you.
I'll send out something on email, and with anybody feel free to revise.
Thank you, Jim, for your assistance on this. All right. So agenda item number 2, draft financial recovery plan. Before I open up for the audience, for the committee audience comments, David, I'm wondering if you would like to possibly address the comment left by Mr. Shoemaker.
I'd be happy to give a report. Good evening, Commissioners. This is a draft financial recovery plan. We're recommending tonight that you provide us with comments on this plan. I know that this has been a long process to get to this point. The state of California state auditor has a pretty detailed process for high-risk cities, and West Covina has been identified as one of those. When they produced their audit in December of last year, they informed the city that 2 things needed to happen. The city needed to do a corrective action plan, and as a second step, the financial recovery plan, is a further requirement. It's formatted in such a way that it identifies key elements based upon all of the state auditor objectives. The action steps, the expected completion dates, it assigns responsible staff, and it provides a format for status updates. It's a very challenging effort to have the city first be aware of its need for some changes and a commitment to use this as a vehicle to help the city get off the list. 2 points to be made that aren't in the written report. This plan has been reviewed by the state auditor's office. They believe that it's complete. They see this as a tool, but they think that the city has done a good job of identifying all the required key elements, the action steps, the specific progress that the city has to make in all of these areas. They asked, as part of their review, that we pay particular attention to two of the items on this list, and we'll go through that in a moment. First, with respect to objective number 6, they want to make sure that everyone on this committee and everyone in the city team understands that a multi-year forecast would be a part of objective number 6. And then secondly, regarding objective number 9, they want to make sure the city understands there'll be ongoing monitoring. Oh, I see Colleen's joined. I can maybe hang up the phone for her now. I would recommend that the committee go through each one of these steps to make sure that it reflects your approval and your understanding of all these different objectives. We have put in there some pretty aggressive dates. The city didn't get in this financial posture yesterday or overnight. The city got into the situation over a number of years, and it's not going to get out of these statuses overnight either. It's been interesting in the conversations with state auditor's office. In some measure, their high-risk city list is itself just a restatement of the problems. They're calling very high-level attention to the situations of fiscal risk. They do not yet. They're not yet able. State auditor's office is not yet able to point to a single city that's ever come off this list once they got on it. So in order for this to be a viable plan, it's going to have to be something that works for West Covina, and that we have a commitment just locally to succeed with. I don't know that I have any specific reaction to the public comment that was made, but I would appreciate that before the committee move past this item, that you spend as much time as you need to go through every one of these objectives. And I'm ready to do that whenever you are.
Well, since your preference is to go over each item with the committee's approval, I think what we are going to do is to, probably read through each item so that if anyone has, sorry, I hear a lot of echo.
I apologize. I'm going to hang up on the city treasurer.
How dare you, David?
I know. I see her smiling face there on the screen, so I think we're good.
Okay. So before we go over each item on the draft financial recovery plan, I just wanted to make sure that every one of the committee audience has a copy of it handy as we discuss.
Yes.
Was that from Marsha?
Yes, sorry, this is Marsha.
Cool. What about Jim?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Colleen?
Yes.
Rosario?
Yes, I do.
Donna?
Yes, I'm good, thank you.
And Dario?
Yes.
Okay. David, would you mind to read off each item so that we can raise if there's any questions or comments?
Thank you. Yes. The first item on the list in terms of the financial recovery plan is state auditor objective number 1, ensure that fees and assessments charged for services align with cost and increased fees to reflect costs reasonably borne in the provision of city services. That is consistent with state law, and that's a best practice. We've identified some action steps, and then we've listed some completion dates which are probably optimistic and need to be amended. Point to be made about this recovery plan. They don't expect us to do all these things on day one, and they're not expecting to receive it until June. So any dates ahead of June could probably be amended to further down. Some of these we could get started on, but we're not going to be able to complete all 9, this month. So we say under action steps, we're going to retain a consultant to determine strengths and weaknesses of the existing service delivery models. We're going to assess city costs and revenue sources. We're going to examine all revenue sources, and we're going to examine all direct and indirect cost of fees for service. This is a consultant-driven fee study. We are anticipating or drafting an RFP, which will be released once we go through that process of interviewing consultants. One will be selected, one will be engaged, and then we'll kick off this scope of work. We're intending that the draft fee study would be completed by October of this year and to the City Council for adoption by the end of the calendar year. We've got the Finance Director in the lead, supported by nearly all the other directors. Questions about this one or comments?
Dave, I'm sorry, Colleen Rosati. I have a couple questions. Right in action plan where it says retain consultant to determine strength and weaknesses of existing services, do we have budget to contractually have a consultant do this? That's a question.
Through the chairman, if I can answer as we go, we do not have budget to be doing these things, nor do we have a lot of excess staff capacity to be doing this stuff with in-house professional staff. I think every one of our service delivery models is going to need to be examined, so it could be quite a process.
Do you have an estimate on what the cost is going to be approximately?
We won't know until we issue an RFP and get proposals for that scope of work. We have found through the RFP process that costs vary widely, and so does the quality of the report. So we'll have to judge that when we get responses to an RFP.
Do you have a do not exceed amount?
We haven't set a budget for it, Colleen, because we haven't got a single proposal back yet. So I don't, in my mind, know what this is going to be.
Do you happen to know, Dave, when the last time these fees were reviewed and adjusted?
We adjusted the building and safety fees about a year ago, maybe a year and a half. The other ones I don't think have been done for a number of years.
I thought in 2013 when there was another finance director, Nita McKay, looked into this. I may be wrong, but I thought there was an adjustment at that point.
I believe
2013 is getting to be, nearly a decade ago. So
that's so true.
It's probably past due.
I believe there were some adjustments made in I think it was 2017, Chris Phelan. But if you want me to, I can research that bit.
Wouldn't hurt to do this every couple years. Even 2017 could be stale. It's not so much what do other cities charge. It's what is the cost incurred by West Covina in the provision of the service. I'll give you a very innocuous example. We recently had a spate of crimes in town. People are stealing catalytic converters like crazy, and our police department was really anxious to try and identify the catalytic converters and etch on them people's license plate numbers so that when one was stolen, they could say it belonged to, whatever car it came off of. You think, well, we could just do this for free. We'll get the towing company to come, or we'll go to the former city shop building and have volunteers or police officers crawl underneath it, and then we'll price that at zero. It might be laudable, but the cost is far more than zero. And so you'd have to wrap up all of your cost of providing that service and then set a fee based on it. There might be a rationale for subsidizing that, but that'd have to be a conscious decision by the city council. I just think that's where cities get into trouble. We know it costs $7 to operate a swimming pool, but we price it at 50 cents because we want all the kids to learn how to swim. We're just going to have to examine those costs and set the fees accordingly.
I have another question, Dave. Under expected completion dates, RFP release April 2021. So we're approaching that. Do we have RFPs in place and ready to go?
Well, one is being drafted, yes. We don't have it ready to publish. We put out our RFPs on Planet Bids, and then we invite the world to examine what our needs are and to come up with proposals based on that.
And in the same category, it says, item number 5, if voter approval is required, assessment districts only, November 2022. What does that mean? What does that look like?
Under action step 2, we said we're going to examine all direct and indirect costs of fees for service, development impact fees, and landscape sewer district assessments. The landscape districts get more city service than they provide revenue. And so under Prop 218, if the landscape districts require an increase, then somehow there'd have to be a process by which voter approval were requested. In terms of which ballot that comes on, that's a future decision. Maybe we should look at that date, Colleen. I take your point. Maybe that's ambitious.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, where it says status report, update monthly, you have responsible staff, leader support, finance director as the lead, and then the support. Who are the folks, if you have the names, we just kind of out of curiosity for me, that are going to be taking this lead as far as the assistant city clerk? I'm assuming that's Lisa.
It is.
Planning manager, who would that be?
That's Joanne Burns.
Okay, city engineer?
It's Mike Ackerman.
And then public service?
That supervisor is Mike Crescent. Often in our organization of this size, you're asking people to wear multiple hats, and you're playing to their strengths. Lisa has a lot of experience in community development and has direct experience with fee studies, so she's the one that's actually been drafting this RFP. Obviously, we've got the finance director in the lead, and she's in the lead as she should be, but she's quite busy with a number of other projects as this committee knows.
Okay, thanks, Dave. And one last question. Under completion dates, you have consultant kickoff, June of 2021. Are we going to party? Are we going to have fun? Are we going to do something good? What are we going to kick off?
It's a staff meeting. They're usually not much fun, but we could try and bring joy. I don't know. Colleen, a good question.
I don't know. Have a kickoff. Woo!
Yeah.
Bring in the Trojan marching band. Thank you. That's all I have.
As Jim, I want to take one of Colleen's recommendations and do what we're supposed to do now and make it into an action plan. I would like to insert on expected completion date between what is now numbered 1 and 2, an item that says established budget. I guess May 2021. That's a motion.
Jim, what are you? May 2021? What are you looking at? Sorry, I don't see that.
I'm looking in the column that says expected completion date.
Yeah.
And there's a number 1 that says RFP release, and there's a number 2 that says consultant kickoff.
Right.
I want to insert a new item between those two, which will be the new number 2. And all the other ones will have an increase of 1 increment on their number. And it says established budget. And I'm suggesting...
Oh, I see.
I'm suggesting a date of May 2021. I'm basically picking up what you suggested and making it into an action plan.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
we have a seconded motion to insert a estimated completion date of May 2021?
I'll second that. Colleen Rosati.
Okay, can we take a roll call?
Yes, give me 1 second, please.
Sure.
David Lynn,
Aye.
Marsha Solario,
Aye.
Dario Castellanos,
Aye.
Donna Chia,
Aye.
Rosario Diaz,
Aye.
Jim Grivich,
Aye.
Colleen Rosati.
Aye.
Okay. Do we have any other comments to item number 1 here?
No.
Okay, let's move on to number 2 then.
This one is a state auditor finding that the city review, evaluate, and monitor all city contracts. We've got 4 action steps and dates in the 3rd column. Were there comments or suggestions about this one?
I have a comment or a question, I guess. And action step number 3, responsible department designated contract managed to evaluate consultant efficiency and work regarding waste hauling and street sweeping. Is that reference to Athens Services in particular, or just?
Well, Athens is our waste hauler. Our street sweeper is nationwide.
So those are the 2 that you'll be reviewing, I assume, correct?
Well,
Actions.
this is a much broader brush. This is a list of all of the city's current contracts. I think the important thought in number 3 is that each department that's responsible would have a designated contract manager. As part of that role, that person will be doing more monitoring and evaluation of the effectiveness of the service delivery. Well, let's pick on street sweeping just because it's so much fun. Not just to let the contract with Nationwide for 15 years, but to actually follow the sweeper and make sure that they're meeting the spec within the contract to get the city the value for the dollar spent.
Mm-hmm.
This is Vice Chair Sawyer. I had a question. I would think this item would also include some kind of legal review of the template itself that we're using for any type of contracts to ensure we don't have evergreen clauses, etc., all required language.
Marsha, was that a motion?
No, right now it's still just a question.
That's our current practice, Marsha. We have the city attorney prepare all of our agreements, professional service agreements. We have a standard template. I'm not aware of any contracts in the last couple of years that have been evergreen, but we've got termination clauses in all of them that allow the city to get out when it needs to. This is quite an exhaustive list of current contracts. I can tell you historically that hasn't been the business practice of the city.
So legal will update the boilerplate template as needed every so often?
Always does.
They do, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's already happened.
Do we have any other comments or motions for this item here?
Under completion dates, where it says current contracts, I'm sorry, let me rephrase this. Number 4, review and update city purchasing and bidding procedures, June of 2021. Is that something that this committee would review as well? Do we get to see the process? That's a question.
certainly could have a role in that as those get reviewed. There's some more specific ones further down. But I can tell you that the city's purchasing procedures are lengthy and cumbersome, and perhaps could be made much more clear and crisp. If the committee wants to see it, we should add that thought here.
Well, Colleen, did you want to do it, or I'm not sure I understood the direction you were going.
Well, I was just curious if we're having issues, possible issues, on some of the folks that we're contractually hiring, review and update cities' purchasing and bidding procedures. I just thought it may be interesting or bring us knowledge as to how do we go about the process. That was my thought. And if it's not a big deal to the rest of the committee, I'm okay with that. It was really more of a question, review and update cities' purchasing and bidding procedures. I was just kind of curious to see how we go about that.
Well,
and make sure we get the most for the buck.
Let me make, this is conversation. Obviously, if you're purchasing procedures, 30 pages, I don't know how long it is. I don't think we're interested in going through all the minutiae, but we are interested in some overarching issues that need to be taken care of. It's already been mentioned that there's problems with evergreen contracts, or I would say any long-term contract. There's problems with is the budget in place, especially for future years. There's problems with, obviously the famous fire contract. What were the implications of that? There's problems with the health thing. That's a current controversy. And I think the committee should be involved with, the principles that should be involved with every contract.
Jim, could you clarify what you meant by the fire contract?
Well, when I'll just be specific for a second. I made a presentation to the city council where I felt the fire contract was the proposed fire contract that the county submitted to the city was defective because it was both evergreen in terms of almost impossible to terminate, and also there was nothing to control the price that they wanted to charge, and I thought that made it a defective contract.
That answers my question.
So I think those overarching principles should be something the committee should review. I'm throwing this out for discussion. I'm not trying to make it an action item yet, but I wonder if the committee is interested in pursuing a review of that kind of basically what I'd call contract policies. I'm searching for language here.
I think the language you're seeking, Mr. Goodrich, is in number 4. We're saying ensure competition for procurements, follow competitive bidding processes, and monitor contract terms, especially when they exceed 5 years.
Well, that's certainly part of it. I was talking about another level of detail underneath this. For example, checking to make sure that there's a not to exceed clause in a contract, price-wise. To me, that's kind of a de rigueur that you should have somewhere as part of your policy. I don't even know if the city has that or not. And those kind of things. I don't know if I'm making myself clear or not.
Well, then maybe we're in the wrong column. Maybe number 4 in column 3 should be review and update cities' purchasing and bidding procedures, including not to exceed limits.
Okay.
Does that get you there?
Yeah, well, that's just one item that I'm suggesting that be added, but there should be a template of some kind saying, does the contract satisfy all these conditions? I'll just give you another example because they come up. There's a series of things that are supposed to be involved in contracts. I happened to see a contract that the city made with the doctor who's a volunteer to help us find out whether we want a health department or not. And the thing that struck me as odd, I didn't find any consideration in that contract. As far as I'm concerned, and normally in a contract, there's always a consideration. That's at least that's the way I learned contracting. And in my mind, there's a checklist for what should be in a contract. I didn't mean to go through all those details right now, but the idea is I was going to suggest that perhaps there should be that kind of document. You could call it a template. That's a good word. And maybe the committee might be interested in looking at that kind of thing. I'm just suggesting this. I'm not at the moment. Unless it's only if other committee members are interested in this stuff that I'd want to pursue it.
Well, I mean, to your point about that health contract, he is in fact serving with no consideration as a volunteer. I just wonder if there's some wording that would help you get where you're trying to go in number 4. When you say review and update purchasing and bidding procedures.
Well, perhaps just adding the word purchasing, contracting, and bidding procedures, and then that'll satisfy me.
Got it.
Add the word. So I move we add the word contracting to item 4 on there.
This is Vice Chair Solorio. Can I ask a quick question? Currently, do contracts have any type of contract routing form? I apologize if I've asked this in the past. It's usually like a form on, almost like a checklist on top of the contract before it's signed, saying legal looked at it, compliance looked at it, etc.
Yes, of course, yes.
Yes,
Thank you.
But I want to make sure that what Jim's suggesting isn't recommending that all contracts come to this committee.
No, I'm not recommending that. I'm just talking about the...
Put it at a snail's pace to get any work done.
No, I'm only talking about looking at the procedures. That's all.
Okay. And just so you guys know, our current policy is 42 pages long. It's very cumbersome.
Obviously.
I believe we reviewed the last update, if I'm not mistaken,
yes, you
years
did.
ago.
I think you're correct, Marsha.
We can handle it.
Jim?
Well, my point is I don't want it to be 42 pages long because nobody can remember to do every little thing and read it every time. You can't memorize a 42-page document.
I totally agree with you, Robin.
Yay!
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Colleen Rosati, what Jim has alluded to was basically what I was trying to get to in my comment on the review and update the purchasing and bidding procedures, just to get a little format, a template, see how things are processed and handled. I think that would be good. I would find that interesting and knowledgeable. Give me knowledge.
We actually do have a routing slip already. The requisition form.
Okay. So do we have a motion to obtain the city's purchasing, contract, and bidding procedure template?
I so move.
I'll second Colleen Rosati.
Can we do a roll call, please?
David Lynn,
Aye.
Marsha Solorio,
Aye.
Dario Castellanos, Dario,
Aye.
Donna Chia,
Aye.
Rosario Diaz,
Aye.
Jim Grewich,
Aye.
Colleen Rosati.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other last comments for item number 2 here? If not, let's move on to number 3, please.
I think the point of the state auditor was they wanted the city to be very judicious in its land sale revenue during this critical time as the city's still reeling from the effects of the pandemic on the city's budget. Were there questions or comments about this one?
I just have a quick question regarding the action step under column 3. Is anything going to happen after we obtain a complete list of the West Covina assets?
Well, I think that the heart of this is in the first 2 columns. If we adopt this as a philosophy, we'd implement it. I guess we'd implement it each and every time.
And really,
sale occurs.
What the state auditors were getting at here is the sale mainly of BKK, and those funds have already been spoken for by the city council, has previously designated that the golf course bonds, which were formerly the 2004 bonds, we have to pay that off first when we get that money. So this one concerns me a little bit, that I don't want to have 2 conflicting directions by city council on the use of this money.
I see.
Mr. Chair, I have a question, Colleen Rosati.
Yes, go ahead.
One of them was clarifying the land sale, and Robin just did that this is mainly referencing the BKK sale. And it says that the city, it says that the city's experience as the result of the effects, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so if these funds are gathered and they're set aside, it says set aside land sale revenue to compensate for any shortfall in revenue the city may experience. Would we, and I would like to suggest that we do, set aside this money in some type of separate account, if that's what it's going to be held for any shortfalls or rainy day fund, if you will, and make sure that it is an interest-bearing account, because we've got some accounts that are not really earning as much as they possibly could be learning. And I would suggest that if this is for shortfalls, that it's not commingled with general fund, if that in fact what is stated here, compensate for any shortfalls in revenue that the city may experience due to the pandemic. Keep it separate.
Just by virtue of the way that the accounting works, any shortfalls, because they're talking about general fund shortfalls, because you have control over any other funds. You just don't spend the money when you don't have it. But that's what fund balance is. It would, you can put it in a separate fund, but if you have a shortfall, you're moving it into the general fund. It just seems like a lot of unnecessary accounting.
Well, my point is that we have a lot of accounts that aren't earning, in my opinion, the amount of interest they could be. And I put that in an email to the finance director, and I think I copied the city manager on the last review that I did, that there's quite a few accounts that have some shortfalls, and you've got large balances that could be earning interest and benefiting the city overall. And I realize that it could be another account or another bookkeeping record or whatever the case may be. I don't think it's that big of a deal. But I think if the shortfalls, we've got infrastructure that's falling down around our ears and different other entities that need some shoring up. So I think if you're going to have compensation for any shortfalls in revenue, that you keep it as compensation for those shortfalls.
And that's what fund balance does in the general fund. That by virtue of the accounting, that's how it works. If your revenues are less than your expenditures, you close out the books at the end of the year and fund balance gets reduced.
for me, I would prefer to see something separate.
And it's very little money once you pay off those bonds.
Still, it could be earning interest, and we have accounts that are not earning much interest.
Colleen, this is Jalen. Do you have any more details like that you can share with the committee? What you mean by the account not earning enough interest? Like, do you happen to have the specific figures handy, by any chance?
I do. I don't know that I have them at my fingertips, but I would be more than happy to share those figures with you guys and what I know. I'm more than happy to. I did send an email to the finance director. I think there was probably, 10 questions or so on there regarding some of the accounting that we have. So, sorry, Dave, I wasn't prepared to answer that question. I do have it. I just don't have it handy, and I'm more than happy to get it for you guys.
I can shed some light on what Colleen's speaking about. At this time of year, the city gets its big revenues. December, January, we get a lot of revenue in. So the balances are up, but they don't remain up because in other months during the year, our expenditures are higher because revenues do not come in equally 1/12 every month.
Dave, I'm going to try to see if I sent an email. Let me see if I can pull it up on my phone while we're doing this, and I can share something. I have it in a hard copy. I just don't have it handy.
No problem. We can come back to this one later.
But in where it says action step along this, Finance Department to estimate city share of each land sale. How does the city share funds? What does that mean? What's an example of that? And then who are we sharing funds with? And that's number 2 on your action step.
I think we mentioned the comment from the state auditor was specifically directed to the potential sale of the land near BKK. And I think their point was they wanted the city to first use those monies to address any shortfalls in revenue. This action step reflects that the claim on those monies would be bonds. So not all of that money, if it sells for $13 or $14 million, will come directly into the city, but rather will be used to defease the bonds. So that the estimate of the city's share would be the city portion that the city is rightfully entitled to, that the bondholders would have a higher claim. We're not sharing it with anybody that's not entitled to it. Maybe that's the wording that's causing the confusion. Maybe I should say city portion of each proceeds of the land sale.
Maybe so. And is there a list, Jim, and did you just answer this or ask this question, or someone did? Is there a list currently? Complete the list of city's assets by March of 2021. Is there a list that we can see of what our assets are?
That's what this action step is. It says that we will complete a list of them. March of 2021 as a way of getting by us, so maybe we'll need to amend that date. But that's the assignment here, is to prepare a list and publish it, I guess.
Okay, so you're going to amend that date to something further out?
Yeah, I think I need to. I think a lot of these dates are ahead of even when this report would be submitted to the state auditor. But I can amend that thought to say we'll prepare and publish instead of complete, because that's what we mean.
Okay.
David, do we need a motion for minor work changes?
I'm just taking notes. A motion is fine if you like.
Okay. Well, I guess I will ask the committee. Do we have a motion to revise the wording from Economic Development Office to track all land sales and report as to use of proceeds of sales to track all land sales? Did someone mention portion?
Well, under number 2, I suggest we amend, instead of saying share, we'd say the city portion of each land sale. We have a list. I guess we would update it and publish it. When we say complete it, we would review it and publish it. Review, update, and publish.
Thank you, David. And what are we changing the estimated date from March to?
Why don't we say June? This one doesn't seem to be a huge mountain to climb. This one seems to be fairly simple. I just worry that we've got so many of these saying we'll do them all in March and April. It's going to maybe be crescendo on us too much.
So, can I just make what was just said into a motion? So March becomes June, and David, you said the words for column 2 and under economic development 2. I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly what you said, but
well, we said finance department would estimate city portion of each land sale.
That was portion of land sale. That was part of it. And then under economic office to track all land sales. David, what did you say after that? I'm sorry, I didn't memorize what you said.
You didn't.
You didn't?
I did not.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I thought you reworded that too. I'm just making it into a motion because we're supposed to make all this official actions.
I'll second that motion. Can we please have a roll call?
David Lynn,
Aye.
Marsha Solario,
Aye.
Dario Castellanos,
Aye.
Donna Chia,
Aye.
Rosario Diaz,
Aye.
Jim Grivich,
Aye.
Colleen Rosati.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we move on to item number 4 here?
Are there questions or suggestions for number 4?
I have a comment or a question. Proactively mitigate risk and exposure to litigation through training and implementation of best risk management practice. Is, just out of curiosity, and I'm not sure if you can share this, Dave, where is the biggest exposure? What department? I think we probably know, but where is the biggest exposure to litigation currently? And then over the last 5 years, has it increased or decreased the litigation? That's the question.
Our biggest exposure is not workers' comp, and it's not property. In fact, it's liability. The city has tracked that now. As part of our joining of the CJPIA, they've got a bar chart that shows it pretty graphically for the last several years. It's not just the frequency of the claims, but it's the severity of them. And the biggest ones are personnel cases that went wrong. Yeah, to multiple millions of dollars.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting and expensive.
I was thinking a different department might be at the head of the list.
These are in the police department.
Anyway,
interesting.
Police and fire. So in the public safety realms.
This is Jim. Is there training that can be identified to mitigate these issues that have occurred?
Yes. And the training is one of the biggest pieces of our risk management program that is, in fact, working to drive down the claims and obviate them from occurring again. This year, it's probably best to judge the effectiveness of our risk management program and our membership of the CJPIA when we've got maybe 4 or 5 years in program, because we're still carrying the tail from the prior years. But our first year experience has been quite good, and we've gone from multiple millions to a 6-figure number in the first year. And this has been at least initial proof that the training and the policies and procedures that are afforded us by CJPI are actually working. It's interesting data, and it's very telling in terms of where the city should put its attention.
This is Vice Chair Solorio. Just a quick question. I know it's still early in the process, but are we anticipating this will be in-person training, online training, a mixture of both by an external party, perhaps internal?
It's a mixture of both. Right now, so much of the training has been via Zoom. But once we get out of this COVID fog, the CGPI is based in La Palma, and the majority of their training is on site there, although they have a really good annual conference as well.
Thank you.
Dave, I'm not sure that everyone knows what CJPIA stands for. Maybe you can enlighten.
Yeah, it stands for the California Joint Powers Insurance Authority. It's probably the preeminent pool for municipalities in California. They've got now north of 120 public agency members, including about 100 cities, representing in total about a fifth the population of the state of California. So they've got a quite professional staff and program to support the city's risk management program. And they've assigned us with a risk manager who's really helping us. We're going down this list here in the second column. We are regularly reviewing this loss cap action plan. They've identified which on that plan are the top 5 worthy of the most important attention. And then we're doing quarterly meetings to review the loss cap and to talk about things that need to be tended and improved. The attachment that's referenced here, the corrective actions, were identified as part of our risk management evaluation when we became members, and we've been working down that list in terms of things that have to be tended to.
Thanks, Dave. On number 3, where it says establish quarterly high-level executive team meeting and safety committee meetings for loss cap, who are those folks that will be attending those meetings, the high-level executive team?
Those are our directors. So it'd be the chief of police, the fire chief, public works, community development, all of our director team.
And thank you. And then the attachment number 2, did we get a copy of that? That's number 4, corrective action taken. Is that part of this report, or is that referenced someplace else where it says attachment number 2?
We've shared that. I don't know if we've shared it recently, but you'd be welcome to see that. There's 60 some items on it.
Okay. And then under the next category, where it has dates, 50% corrective action completed by December 21, and then 100% of corrective action completed by December 2023. This is a question. Does this date fall in line, I'm assuming it does, with the audit report and what they have expressed they want the completion to be done no later than December of 2023, so we're in compliance?
Well, I think 2023 is a little ambitious, but I think it's better to have an earlier goal and to fall short than a later goal and take our sweet time. We didn't get any feedback from them about the dates, except they did comment that a number of these are, March, April, May, and they weren't even expecting to see this until, June or July. So it could take as long as 5 years to complete 100% of those corrective actions. There's some major things on that list requiring major funding.
So they were good with this date. They were happy to see that. What was I can't remember, I'm sorry. What was the drop dead date that they gave us?
They saw this. I think the main point they made when they reviewed it was they want the city to have ongoing monitoring of these measures. They were less concerned about any one date than they were about wanting the city to use this as a tool and to continue to make progress against all these goals. They would like to see quarterly review by the city council so that there's some update to it as we roll along.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments from anyone? If no, I don't think we have any motion for this particular item. Shall we move on to number 5?
Questions or comments about number 5?
Yes, this is Vice Chair Solorio. At our last meeting that we discussed the plan, we had discussed adding the comment from the report indicating that we would use surrounding or comparable city data for this item, and I don't see that listed.
Marsha, where would you think that might fit? When we say evaluate the current model? Unless you're talking about a comparison to a standard, I'm not.
Oh, my apologies, I'm on the wrong one.
Okay.
All right. Retract.
Any other comments? If not, shall we move on to number 6, please? So I do have a question for this one. This is Jalen for David. So it appears that it is our intention to start reporting anything that exceeds the threshold of 75,000 going forward. And I do have a question in connection with our agenda item number 1. Let's say if the RFP that we receive ends up exceeding 75K, is that something we'll be expecting to do a short-term and long-term impact analysis? I'm just curious.
I would say there's no plans for that at this time.
So how do we draw a line, like for what kind of things that exceed 75K would we expect some sort of short or long-term impact analysis?
I guess you would have to if it's 75,000 per year or 75,000 over 75,000 for a 5-year contract.
That's a good point. So shall we specify a little bit more here under the action plan?
I would like to change the wording in that first sentence. I'll be a little more specific than what was just said. it says long-term impacts for expenditures over 75,000. I'd like it to read long-term impacts for revenue and expenditure decisions over 75,000 per year. I hope you could follow what I'm trying to say in that sentence. I'm adding the word revenue, and I'm adding the per year that was just discussed.
And you're not talking about what's in the budget?
No, it's just to evaluate. Anytime the city council is being asked to make a decision on something that will cost more than $75,000 per year, there will be a section of that city council report that details the revenue and expenditure impacts of that decision. That's essentially what this is calling for.
As long as we're not identifying specific revenues in the general fund, because general fund money can be used for anything.
That's right. I understand that.
Yeah.
But let me be specific.
I just don't want to tie our hands so much, Jim, that we are spending all our time trying to do analysis that doesn't make sense doing, because we're required to have a financial audit. So regardless of the revenues, we have to have it done.
I understand. I understand that. This wasn't. I'm actually, to be direct and specific for just a moment, I'm trying to avoid what I considered a serious problem with the health department proposal. Was not accompanied with a revenue and expenditure impact, and I thought that was a serious deficiency in the item as it was presented to the council. And this item here that we're recommending, at least I'm recommending right now, would hopefully forestall that sort of thing happening in the future. When some kind of recommendation goes to the council, it'll be accompanied by an evaluation of long-term revenue and expenditure impact. And
I think you're going to get that for the health department. You just haven't seen it yet. We're not at that point yet where we're setting a budget.
I'm just trying to say it'd be policy. That's all. When a council is asked to act on something, they'll see this. And I guess I'm making that in a term of a motion, the wording changes I just suggested.
Jim, could you give that to me again? I didn't understand where the word revenue would fit into this sentence.
Okay. After the word impacts for, and then you insert revenue and expenditure, and then I added the word decision after the word expenditure. Over $75,000 per year. That's the per year is an addition.
So here's my question for Robyn and David. Like, is this your intent when you put down this particular action item here? Or were you thinking about something specific over a threshold of 75,000 that you wanted to do a short and long-term impact analysis?
Well, the state finding is that we do an analysis for significant spending decisions. In other objectives here, we're going to talk about revising the purchasing policies and bidding procedures. I'm not sure 75,000 is the right number, because those bidding procedures, we adopt the State Uniform Act, might be what state law allows, and not $75,000.
And also, by adding the word revenue, you're changing the state finding, because they're talking specifically about spending.
Oh well, I disagree. I disagree with you with that on that, Robyn, because I look on page 18. They talk about multi-year financial forecasts include all projected revenue and expenditures. So they're in a different place. They only talk about expenditure, but I thought it was clear that they wanted revenue part of the equation. I
thought that the first column was taken right from the state audit report, which specifically says significant spending decisions.
It's verbatim from the state.
Well, I'm reading verbatim a recommendation 2 on page 18. Maybe that's the problem here. We have a recommendation that isn't included in the list. And that may be what it is, what's going on. We were looking at 2 different recommendations when we were looking at this.
It may be addressed further down. I don't recall at this point.
Anyway, the one I got was from page 18. And maybe they repeated themselves in this document. I actually didn't check for that. I wasn't aware it was an issue until just now.
Jim, can I make sure that I'm understanding this correctly from you? Are you expecting to see short and long-term impact analysis when the city is expecting a revenue over $75,000 per year? I'm not sure if I'm understanding that correctly.
Yeah, when the city is making a decision and it has a revenue and or expenditure impact of over $75,000, let me give you a different example that has nothing to do with the health department for a moment. Maybe the city has an opportunity to get some money from the federal government for fire protection, and it gives them money to hire firefighters. But so that's revenue impact, right? They're going to get some money to hire firefighters. And however, when you do an analysis of it, the federal government says that they're only going to provide sufficient revenue to pay the basic salaries of the firemen, and they will not pay for overtime. Well, if you analyze the revenue and compare it to the expenditures, obviously the expenditures are going to be much higher than the revenue. And so perhaps it's a poor decision to proceed with accepting this money from the federal government. The city actually did that in history. And so that's why I want the word revenue in here. That decision that the city made predated the current city manager and finance director, so they probably aren't aware of why I'm pushing this particular envelope, because it caused a lot of trouble in the fire department. I think the firemen are still mad about it. So you got to look at both sides, revenue and expenditures, when you're making a decision. I hope I'm
maybe Jim, we could follow the language verbatim from the state on page 18, which says West Covina should update its multi-year financial forecast at least annually to include all projected revenue and expenditures. Can we just quote the state directly? Would that get you where you're trying to go?
Well, I'm trying
to go somewhere beyond what the state says.
I'm trying to focus it on major decisions that the council's making. It's not just a projection; it's relative to decision making. I
just really like the language that the state uses. It says it should use the forecast to quantify the long-term impact of its decisions on the city's financial condition. And I'd be happy to just parrot the state's words right back to them, because I think it's a sound recommendation.
Okay. All right.
Do that?
Yeah, sure.
Does that work? Okay. Because they talk about this there in a slightly different context, but I think they make the same point you're making, just with some different wording. So let me try and incorporate that.
We need a motion for the wording change.
I so move what David said.
I'll second that. This is Vice Chair Solorio.
Can we please have a roll call?
Yes. David Lynn?
Aye.
Marsha Solario?
Aye.
Daria Castellano?
Aye.
Donna Chia?
Aye.
Rosario Diaz?
Aye.
Jim Grivich?
Aye.
Colleen Rosati? Colleen Rosati?
Sorry. Aye.
Thank you.
And my last question on this for David. Are you comfortable with this 75,000 figure, or is that something that you would need to revisit?
Well, I mean, Jim raised a different context. He referenced page 18 of the state auditors, and so I'd just like to use the state auditors' language there. I think that they want significant spending decisions, but they've got a tool in mind on page 18. I'd just like to reference it there and promise to do it nearly verbatim. It's maybe some verb tenses would change, but the original thought would remain intact. I think I understand where Jim's going with it.
Okay. All right, let's move on to item number 7, please.
Item 7 asks that the city implement a formal process for development of reasonable budget projections. The city's budget projections with this finance director have been very good. I think this year we were within 1% of estimated. It was spot on. But they're asking for some formal system. So we've identified 4 things that we could say that we did. Quarterly reviews, especially tracking quarterly planning and building permit activity, incorporating the HDA sales tax information into those estimates, and budgeting for risk management costs based on actual loss experience. I don't know that any of this is new. I think we're doing all of those things now, but this just articulates those formal things that we're now doing maybe more informally.
David, it's my perception that this was mostly about the perpetual overdrafts in fire department overtime and in litigation costs. And I thought that that's all they were doing is saying we should budget what we actually spend in those areas.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think in some prior years, especially in the risk management category, those were well understated. Was there wording that we needed to look at here or review or change?
Well, I'm fine with it.
I'm fine with that.
It's fine.
Okay, if we have no other comments, let's move on to number 8. But before we do that,
on number 7.
What's this?
It says support community development director.
Oh, yeah, we don't have one of those.
We don't have that.
Maybe if the budget gets better, we'll hire one again, but we don't have it for now, for sure. So,
we'll come up with someone else.
Maybe I'll say my newly hired assistant finance. Let me think that out a little bit.
Okay.
Yes, I thought you were in the process of hiring somebody so that Robin wouldn't have to do everything.
Well, we've hired her. Wait till you meet her. You're really going to like her, Jim. I'm guaranteeing it.
All right, shall we move on to number 8? Before we go on, I just wanted to do a quick time check. It's 7:30 right now, so we have roughly 30 minutes left for the meeting.
Yeah.
Item number 8. This is regarding the meet and confer regarding the negotiation of employee union agreements.
I think this was the one that Marsha was referring to, and I hope we captured her thought here.
Yes, thank you.
Meet and confer with employee agreements. This is where the money is. So we're saying begin the meeting process with all labor groups. There's usually 3 major factors when you look at compensation. What's happened with the CPI, what's going on with the city's ability to pay, and what's going on with the labor market. We said on the labor market comparatives we would do it on a total comp basis. And I hope we included every element of total comp, base salary, differentials, medical, pensions, and OPEB. Did I leave any off? We got them all?
Looks good to me.
Looks good.
Looks fine to me. if we have no other questions, let's move on to the last item here, which is regarding the improvement of internal purchasing processes and enforcement to reduce susceptibility to waste and fraud.
We've got two items. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just had just a quick question, and you kind of touched on this, or Robin did earlier. My only comment was about trying to adopt the revised purchasing and credit card usage policy by October 2021. Usually, best practice, we want to try to adopt any new policies or updated of policies by the beginning of the fiscal year. I know that might not be realistic for this year, but is that something maybe we can discuss a little? Maybe we could push it to July, or just so the city staff, you're starting the year fresh with new rules. And
if I could,
I would say this: if we're going to have a July date, let's make it July 22. Because I have got project on top of project on top of project, and people working literally 6 and 7 days a week. So I don't know that I can produce anything more any quicker. So if you have to have July, let's go with 2022.
And no, I'm fine. I just wanted to open it up to discussion, and I'm okay with October 2021, and maybe moving forward as we do annual updates, or as we see fit to try to aim for a July.
Also, I believe that our credit card policy is within our purchasing policy, which we're going to be updating. But our credit card policy is already pretty robust, in my opinion. And we've already, they came across one sheet that wasn't signed, and that's where this comment came from. We have since sent out the policy to everyone who has a credit card. We've had them sign that they read the policy and understand the policy. And we've also had them update their signatures with us and made sure everything's up to date. So in my mind, we're done with this.
Yes, I recall that. Thank you, Robin. Other than that, I'm good with this.
I have a quick question, Colleen Rosati, City Treasurer. Under action step number 2, evaluate California Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act, Public Contract Code 22000222045. What exactly is that, Dave?
This is a provision under state law that allows the city to have bidding procedures with which we could award contracts for public construction projects. Again, those are defined in state law. There's specific criteria used for this informal bidding. I think it's going to be a way to help the city get more competitive pricing and to deliver projects more timely. A lot of cities adopted this 10 years ago. So we're behind the times, but I think it's past due, and in my mind, it couldn't happen soon enough.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for that explanation. And I had noted also about the date for adopting purchasing and credit card usage policy a little sooner than later, but it sounds like you have addressed that already. So thank you for taking care of that.
Any other comments or motion?
I move we recommend this document as amended to the City Council, the committee.
I'll second that. Colleen Rosati, City Treasurer.
Can we please have a roll call?
David Lynn?
Aye.
Marsha Solario?
Aye.
Dario Castellanos?
Abstain.
Donna Chia?
Aye.
Rosario Diaz?
Aye.
Jim Grivich?
Aye.
Colleen Rosati?
Aye.
Thank you.
Before we move on or adjourn, I'd just like to thank you guys for spending so much time on this. It's kind of the heavy lifting of the state audit process and better document for you having reviewed it. So thank you all for doing that.
David, I have a question about that last motion I made because it has been an issue in the past. What method should be used to pass this recommendation to the City Council?
Well, when this goes to council, the staff report will reflect that you unanimously recommended for adoption.
Okay, fine. That's all I wanted to know.
Oh, Dave, will we see a final copy, a final draft of the corrections that were made? Can we see a final draft?
Not a problem.
Okay, thank you. You can email it to us. That would be great. That way we can just check some balances on what we discussed. Perfect. I have another comment, but are we done with this? Maybe I'll reserve it for...
Yeah, I believe that wraps up our discussion for the financial recovery plan. So if Colleen has another question separately, please go ahead.
Thank you, David. Just real quick, and maybe you guys discussed this already before I got on the meeting. Moving forward, do we have a meeting planned, next meeting? And can I recommend recommendation that we do it in public? Are we past the hazardous stage, the cootie stage?
I know Robin has need for a meeting a couple, 3 weeks out. I'll let her tell what date she had in mind because we're in the budget season now, pretty quick. Colleen, nobody wants to be back to regular meetings more sooner than me, but we're thinking now for City Hall, we're probably not going to be having this kind of meeting in City Hall until we've got the whole herd vaccinated here, and it's moving at the pace of frozen molasses in terms of being able to put needles in everybody's arms. So the answer is probably not right away. We're looking tentatively at the 1st of May.
So, but Planning Commission are meeting at City Hall, and then Community Service just met at Cortez. They managed that.
They met at Cortez with big spacing. The Planning Commission meets, as does Council, with the plastic partitions and all the seats blocked off and capacity for 18. I'll see if we can find a room big enough to accommodate. Maybe Cortez, maybe the council chambers. I'd really like to be able to get you guys back into regular meetings. I much prefer them, and I know you do.
And I think, Vice Chair Solorio, thank you to Colleen. That was going to be my comment as well.
Well, I was thinking the council, I don't know if this is possible, but it's already is petitioned off. You've got the seating already petitioned off. It seemed like a quick fix.
Might work.
I won't be attending, Dave. I'm at high risk. I haven't been vaccinated. I will not be attending.
There you go.
Okay. Well, we understand, Robin.
And I think May is also just right around the corner. We'll revisit this in April.
Yep. With that said, I wanted to quickly circle back to our earlier discussion regarding our meeting minute format going forward. So, do we want to start audio and video taping our discussion in the future, or are we okay with just documenting action items in our minutes?
I'm okay with documenting action items in the minute. We might videotape it when we're in public again, but this Zoom thing, I don't know if that's very good to videotape. I don't know.
Vice Chair Solorio, I concur with Jim's comments.
Okay. Do we need a comment? Do we need a motion for this, or is this okay? Acceptable.
I don't know if we need a motion. Do we?
I don't think so.
All right. If not, then why don't we talk about our next meeting date?
So this last week we had a panel that interviewed the auditors from the RFP that we sent out, and we interviewed the top 3 firms, and so I want to set up that meeting I wanted actually to get it on the next city council meeting, but I was too late. I was past the deadline. I just couldn't get it done. So my recommendation is that we do April 7th, which is the day after a council meeting. But because of the deadlines for the staff reports for the city council, I need to get that report out. They go out on the 13th, I believe, and Valerie can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not at my desk, so I don't have a city calendar in front of me.
Yes, the staff reports need to go out on the 13th, yes.
So that means I need to have it prepared and in our Agenda Quick software. When, Valerie?
By April 6th, it has to be in our Agenda Quick software.
I'm sorry, I'm a little confused. So you had a panel that looked at the RFPs, and they came up with 3 possible choices. And then
a conclusion of the one that we're going to recommend.
Pardon?
We came up with a conclusion of the firm that we're going to recommend.
Oh, so there's just one that we are going to interview or talk to?
We already had interviews.
Oh, I thought the member of this committee was going to be part of that.
There were 2 members, 3 were supposed to be there, 2 were there.
I was on that list. I don't remember seeing an email.
Because we couldn't accommodate everybody on the Audit and Finance Committee indicated that they wished to participate, which then we would have had to have a formal meeting. And we decided to go forward to expedite this process.
I didn't think it was everybody.
It was everybody. Everybody that I heard last time indicated they wished to participate.
It was just the public members, not the elected council members were not part of that process. David, you're on mute.
We had the chairman and the vice chairman from the committee on.
Yes, this is Chairman. So the city manager has reached out to both myself and Marsha and commented that they wanted us to be involved with the preliminary screening of the RFP that we've received. I believe they received a total of 7 or 8, and then they just prioritized on interviewing the top 3 that provided us the lowest cost estimate. So we did spend a couple of hours to interview and ask all the questions that we needed to and come up with the recommendation at the end.
So did an email go out to the rest of us that wanted to participate that this was even going on?
I didn't get anything. This is Donna.
Thank you, Donna.
I didn't get anything.
Thank you, Jim. So I think it would have been polite, maybe professional, to say, due to whatever situation, thank you for volunteering to be part of the committee or interview process. I kind of find this, with all due respect, a little sneaky. Especially when we expressed that we wanted to be involved. And there was no email, no correspondence. This is the first I'm hearing of it. I don't know if anybody else heard it. Donna said she hasn't heard anything and Jim hasn't. I don't know about the other folks. I think this is sneaky. And I don't think it's appropriate. We could have done a panel.
Just from my point of view, would have been much better to indicate to the entire group that only due to the situation that only 2 members could be accommodated, and does the group have any problem with the chair and vice chair being our representatives? That would have been a much better process than what didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. I agree, Jim. I don't like it. I'm very disappointed that it took that direction. No comment? So where do we go from here then?
We want to have a meeting on the 7th of April, bringing that forward, informing the entire committee what the outcome was, and I'm going to take it to the city council the second week in April.
Okay, let me ask you this. Out of the firms that were interviewed and this one that has been chosen, has this firm ever worked with any of the city staff? Are they friends with any of the city staff? Do they know any of the city staff? Do they know any of the key players?
I knew several members of 2 of the 3 firms. I've been around in this business for a long time, and I pretty much know the auditors in all the firms. There was only one that I had never dealt with before.
And which of the firms did you guys decide on, and how many of those folks that work for that firm do you know?
I'm not sure I like the tone.
Well, this is my concern.
Let me finish. If I could have the floor, I would like to speak. It was a professional panel. We have representation of this committee in the form of the chairman and the vice chair. I appreciate that everyone wanted to be a part of it, and I thank you for your interest in doing that. If an email should have gone out and that slipped through the cracks, I accept that, and I apologize that that didn't happen. I don't know that that would have changed the results. We had very qualified firms, and we had, at the end, a unanimous decision as to which firm to recommend. A very qualified firm. If your question is, are they friends, the answer is no. I've never broken bread with any of these people from any of these firms, never had a meal, don't exchange Christmas cards, don't send gifts, don't regard them as friends. They're professional firms interviewed based on their professional credentials. And so I don't like the idea that some contract is being thrown to somebody's friend. I'm not going to let that go by. Didn't happen.
Okay, well,
not nice. Not nice.
Well, thank you for the comment, Dave. And the reason I bring it up is because the last time we looked at an audit firm, there was a panel, and we interviewed them. And one of the questions that I asked, at that time, way back when, was, do you know any of the folks that work here at West Covina? And sometimes, having been in the banking business for 22 years, and I've seen it happen, not saying that it's going to happen, not saying that it did happen, I have seen it in my professional work environment. Sometimes when you have acquaintances, sometimes things get overlooked. It's just better to have a very neutral firm that you have no past experience with when they're auditing you. And what I've seen in the banking business, when auditors came in and maybe they worked with other folks, would say, I found this and this is going on. And so that was why I asked the question. I'm not trying to accuse anybody of anything. I did see this last time where the folks that were currently working in the finance department were friends, acquaintances, past co-workers, whatever you want to call it, and there were some things that were done that I didn't agree with. And I think some things didn't get disclosed because they knew each other. And that's why I asked it. I'm not trying to pick on Robbeyn. I'm just trying to say that you need a new, especially with given our situation right now, with the state audit looming over us. I just think a very, very neutral firm that there is no relationship whatsoever, past, present. And I'm not saying you'd have to extend Christmas cards or lunch or brunch or whatever. That was...
well, we interviewed firms based on their professional qualifications. We had prepared questions that were uniformly asked of the firms. They made presentations. They were selected without fear or favor. And we intend to recommend that firm to the City Council.
As Vice Chair Solari, just to add, just to kind of help maybe appease the room, given that it's a city, there's only a certain number of firms that can perform audits for a city, municipality. So, and given that we have a finance director and a city manager that have been in government for so many years, it would be almost impossible to find a firm that they haven't had some kind of working relationship with, because they've gone city to city. They change auditors every few years. So eventually you're going to come across, in one capacity or another, all these firms. So I don't know if that helps kind of ease your concern, but I understand your concern.
Thank you, Marsha, and this is Dario. And to add to that, I think to create such a body where we go in that direction, I think that would be something that we would want to discuss with the council, because it kind of feels sometimes like this body wants to move in the direction of the 6th or 7th council member. So I think we should be careful about going in that direction too. In that something, the way it was handled, I think, was fair, professional, and I understand your concern, Colleen, but I think that any deviation from the way David and Robbeyn handled it would be something that should be discussed on a council level.
Well, I just saw last time that the majority of the people in the finance department knew these auditors very well. And maybe some things didn't get disclosed as they should have, going back
Could you
4 or
think of
5 years
maybe
ago.
one example of the possibility of maybe something that didn't get disclosed?
I'm sorry?
Any examples of like which kind of items of concern might have been something that didn't get disclosed in the past? Just to try to understand what.
Yeah, it had to do with the investment report, and and the investments. And I'd be more than happy to share with you, Dario, anytime. But it had to do with the investment report, and it had to do with the investments at the time. So.
Okay, so we could focus on that. I think overall it would be immaterial in the net effect to the city, but definitely I want to check that out. What you saw in the past,
Sure.
We could discuss that.
Absolutely, and I think that's why members of this committee wanted to be part of the process. Anyway.
Okay, yeah, we'll dive into that later on and listen to what you've learned in the past.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And if I can just make it clear that when I say I knew 2 of the 3 firms, I am not friends with them. I have no ties to them. I know of them from working in the industry, going to conferences, talking to people about, because they have booths. You talk to them, you get to know them a little bit as far as professionally, but on a personal basis, nothing.
for the next meeting date. Is everyone fine with April 7th at 6 p.m.?
It's okay with me.
I'm okay with it.
Works for me.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. May I have the motion to adjourn the meeting?
David,
This is 7:57. Yep.
before you do, I wanted to virtually introduce our new Assistant Finance Director, Stephanie Russell. Stephanie comes to us recently relocated in California and comes to us from Texas. She has a master's degree in public administration and several other credentials. She's certified with the Government Finance Officers Association as a certified finance officer. And I don't know, I'm assuming she's still here. I don't see her.
I'm still here.
I do see her on the camera.
Okay.
Early on, I complimented her on her courage for us to let us see her. That was nice of you.
I don't have that ability, unfortunately, Jim. I'm at home.
Well, the minority of the group is on video, and the majority is not. So here you have
very
company.
Happy to have Stephanie here. This is her first week, and we've already inundated her with a lot of things and projects to do. So she'll be a great asset to the finance department and to the city as a whole.
Thank you, Robyn, and welcome on board, Stephanie.
Thank you.
All right. Any other last comments here? If not, I'll move to adjourn the meeting at 7:58 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.